Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started here because it's 2 o'clock. And I like to start on time and end on time. First of all, I'm going to talk about the assignments for the week. And if any of you got questions, you can either put them in the chat and I'll get to them in a little bit. Or if you're being we're a relatively small group, you can just undo your mic and just ask, which is fine. Okay. Just kind of where we're at and what's going on. Well, first in the stream, I mainly just got my Zoom information right now, as you probably saw, and the fact that I was working on grades and my contact info. For our class work, I've been updating grades. I haven't gotten to everything yet that's been in, but I got a lot, including the test. If somebody missed the test for whatever reason, they'd have to contact me about if they want to, if they still want to take it, obviously, and what's going on. Going back into last week we started chapter 2, cultural diversity and conformity. And we had a couple of videos you had to do an assignment with. And we had the slides to get started on, the notes and the slides. Now, I did not make them due last week. They're due the 7th, which is Wednesday. So the idea was that you get them started last week, maybe you get them done, that's great. And if you didn't get them done, you still got a couple more days and do a good job. And just to go back to the slides, I think everyone knows that I believe I put a sample on here. I usually do. Maybe that was on the first one. Okay. So, but you know what the slide should be like. I did tell a lot of people that I wanted the numbers in there with the actual terms. As long as you got the number that you need, 43 for this time around, I'm not going to be so picky if you put the number on the slide itself. So if you didn't do that, I can see the numbers when I check your Google Slides. So I'll know if you got 43 slides or not. So yeah, that's what carried into this week would be the slides to finish those up. Then because you're finishing that up, that's part of what your work is for this week. We're going to have the chapter 2 test on Friday. And just like the last one, it's more of an assignment. You'll be able to use your notes, but still, you know, I want you to do a good job on the slides and look ahead. And I also want you to be thinking about this stuff, not just look it over for the sake of getting points or whatever, but think over what's going on. What is this about? How does this apply to me? What do I already know about it? Because I'm sure you already know about some of these topics, at least a little bit. And they are important things. So many of you are going to go on to take sociology in college. It's one of the reasons you probably took this class. If you want to do dual enrollment, you have to take this one first before you can take the KCC one. And then whatever you do in life, whatever career, knowing about different people and cultures and all the things we talk about in sociology is quite useful. Now, a big project I got this week, big only in the sense that you got to watch a long video, is this one here. Now, as I already said, we are doing a variety of videos and things that aren't always just about the current chapter we're on. They apply to sociology in general, in the big picture. And what this here is, these frontline documentaries, I believe this is the first one I'm using this time around, but I'll use a number of them from PBS, are really good documentaries. I mean, they're really well done. They're really interesting in my view, and they cover all kinds of topics. And the one this is a new one, just came out, you know, not long ago. It's about AI, which is artificial intelligence. Now you might say, Mr. Rio, why are we doing artificial intelligence in sociology? Well, number one, we are in an era where artificial intelligence is growing and expanding by leaps and bounds. And number two, it's already having some impact on our lives. And all the predictions is in the coming 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to have a massive influence on our lives. Just use one example, self-driving cars or self-driving trucks. Think of all the people that drive trucks for a job. I think last I read in the US, it's over 50,000 people. Imagine even if half of them lose their jobs to AI or to self-driving trucks. Imagine what an impact that would be. You know, on one hand, someone might say, well, now you got trucks that someone doesn't have to sit in for 10 hours a day. Well, that person that sat there 10 hours a day was making a living and paying the bills with that money. So how's that going to affect things? AI can be used in a lot of different areas and many good. It's not all bad. There's a lot of good things about artificial intelligence. So it's kind of looking at this new technology and then focusing on from a sociology point of view and thinking, how is this going to affect our lives, people, groups? What's good about it? What's not good about it? What do we need some concerns about? And it's a longer video to watch. The assignment's not real hard if you watch the video, but I think you'll find it interesting. So if you're the kind of person who wants to sit down, knock it out one shot, watch the 2-hour video. I've watched it. I really enjoyed it. Great. If you want to break it up a little bit and watch an hour one night, an hour another night, that's okay too. This one here, cultural diversity. This is just a TED Talk. We use TED Talks a fair amount because they got interesting topics. And this lady just talks about cultural diversity. And it's, I think, interesting. It's only a 14-minute TED Talk. It's got a little assignment next to it you can open up and do some questions with. So it's not too hard. So other than finishing up your notes, you pretty much just got this little TED Talk to do, not too hard. Probably knock that out in less than half an hour. And the AI one, the reason it's going to take you over 2 hours is simply because the video is 2 hours. The assignment itself is not that hard. And when I ask for things like summaries and opinions and put in open-ended questions and ask you to write some 1 or 2 paragraphs on, I know for some of you that's very easy to do. And they are, in my view, easy assignments. For others of you that aren't used to writing paragraphs or 2 paragraphs, and you think, what do I write? Well, besides summarizing whatever you watched, you also can, you know, when you're not sure what to write, you can put in some examples from the video. Depending on how I worded the question or that, you can put on some things that makes you think about or concerns or opinions. So you do have some flexibility there. So that is a little bit about what's going on with that. And first, before I say anything else, any questions up to this point? You could unmute yourself. I'll check the chat. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. Okay. How's your work coming along? Everyone doing okay? Keeping up on their stuff? As I've said, oh yeah, as I've said numerous times, if something does get in the way of a due date or getting something done or whatever, you know, contact me. On occasion, I'll hear from a student who's moving or, you know, something, you know, significant happened that might get in the way of that. But I know most cases it's not. And like I said, even though these are notes I share with you and you make the slides and that, they come right out of a sociology textbook. So if you were taking, if we had a textbook, these are the things that would be in that topic. I'm just going to back to our notes. We talked last week. I went over a little bit culture, languages, values, norms, cultural variation. Reason I put for 13 multiple slides. If you have trouble fitting this on one slide, you can put 2 slides for 13. That's why I put that on there. But cultures can be very different from one another in many ways. There are, however, certain features that all cultures share. And these are known as cultural universals. What is a universal? Okay. First of all, let's see here. I'm looking here to see what it says in your notes here. They got some down here if you go down to number 16. Number 17 has some examples. All cultures have some type of family. I've never heard of a culture that doesn't have something about family in it. And of course, families can take on some different forms. All cultures have some type of government. It could be at the local level. It could be just a village that has some people in charge of the village. It could be a country like the United States. All cultures have something to do with the economy, the way to trade goods. In some areas, it just simply literally trade. I'll give you some of my, meat for some of your vegetables or whatever it is that you sell. And another one is education. Every culture got some way they teach people and pass on information, whether it's through schooling or other ways that they do it. All cultures have communication. I don't know if you know this or not, but not all languages are written down. Did you know that? There's actually a lot of languages out there that don't have an alphabet, and everything is passed along orally. In other words, people have to tell stories. Now, some of those languages now use a variation of maybe our alphabet or other alphabets, where they've taken the language and try to put it into either the alphabet we use or another alphabet like Arabic. But they're not, Arabic or English. They're just using the alphabets. But there's a lot of languages out there where it's only passed on orally. Basically, all cultures got some kind of arts, both literal art, music, dance, things like that. You'll find just about every culture. And leisure, things that people enjoy doing. Almost pretty much all cultures focus on basic needs, which is like food, shelter, water. And basically all cultures focus on technology. Now, we think of technology as computers and internet and smartphones, which is many places around the world, you'll find that too. But technology could be, tools. Technology could be simple things, that you use. It could be a plow that you use an animal to pull through a field. So it doesn't have to be high technology like we may be used to. Subcultures. The big difference, this is the last thing I'm going to touch on here. The big difference between a subculture and a counterculture is a subculture. I'll just use myself for an example. I grew up with grandparents from Sweden and Italy. So when I was a kid growing up, I had one set of grandparents speaking Italian and another set of grandparents speaking Swedish. And we had Italian food and Swedish food and cultural things and music and all that kind of stuff. And that's true with a lot of Americans, true with people from all kind of backgrounds, all kind of cultures. Don't have to be from other countries. It could be people in the U.S. that have local cultures or ethnic cultures or whatever they may be. And that is a subculture. The objective of people like that, myself included, is not to go against the main culture. It's to say, hey, we're part of the main culture, the American culture, or whatever you want to call it. But we also have our subculture that we do, our own things that we do a little bit on our own. Okay, and that doesn't have to be around ethnic group. That could be around other things too. It could be around, like, teenagers like to hang out. They have a subculture. People of political groups might want to hang out with other people that think like they do. That could be a subculture. People in a certain geography, maybe up in the Upper Peninsula, might have a subculture because they have a little different ways of doing things up there. So in all subcultures, they're not doing anything against the general culture. They just have another culture too. Countercultures are a little different. Countercultures are purposely trying to go against the main culture. Now, they're not necessarily doing anything bad or criminal or threatening people, though some countercultures have done that. But most countercultures just simply want a different way of life, a different lifestyle. On the kind of lighter side, you might have, if you ever saw old films and that, of people who are like hippies, they live on a commune, they go live out in nature. Now, there's still people like that today, do things like that. They want to, get away from it all, get off the grid. They really don't like the main culture. They want to purposely separate from it. Some religious groups do that, where they're not just a subculture, but they actually are very hostile to the main culture, and they want to break off and do their own thing. In some ways, the Amish are like that. I wouldn't say the Amish would say they're against the main culture, but in reality they are, because they pretty much are isolating themselves. They're rejecting modern technology. and they kind of limit their contact with the bigger culture. On the negative side, counterculture could be bad things. It could be criminals, and it could be anarchists, and it could be people that might be violent or something like that. So that could be counterculture also. So that's just a little difference there. And as long as I'm here, I'll just touch on ethnocentrism too. Ethnocentrism is a term you'll hear a lot, and if you go into college, you'll be not just in sociology, but you might hear it in other classes. And that's the idea of not only that's the idea of viewing your culture as superior to others. And a lot of Americans are like this, to be honest with you, and I don't think that's a good thing. Why do I not think it's a good thing? My personal opinion, not because I don't think there's a lot of awesome things about our culture and our country, but I don't think that's a good attitude to have toward everybody else. Okay, because there are a lot of good things in other countries too, and other cultures, just like there's bad things in other countries and other cultures. And the idea of ethnocentrism isn't that I mean, there's nothing wrong with having pride in your country and your culture and that. And my view where it becomes negative is when you start using that as a reason to look down on everybody else. And I think you can have pride in our country and our culture and appreciate things from other people and other cultures and other, places around the world. So ethnocentrism is where you view your culture superior to others. End of story. Like you're not even trying to think there's anything else that's true out there. And it often leads to negative things. It can lead to discrimination. It can lead to your own culture stagnating, okay, where your own culture doesn't develop that well. It can lead to, just having a lot of, not good relations with other people around the world. And now connected to that, just below it, is cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that culture should be judged by its own standards. It can help explain beliefs or behaviors that seem strange or different. I'll just share one quick story about that. I've always gone on my way to meet people from other countries and cultures, and I enjoy talking to them and learning about their culture from their point of view, because my objective is to try to understand them, not necessarily agree with them, not necessarily I want to live that culture, but I want to understand who they are, why they think the way they think, and why they do the things that they do. So I was talking to some friends from the Middle East, and you may have heard that in many of the Middle East countries, and most in the Muslim countries, a man can have up to 4 wives. And it's not just Muslims. There are other parts of the world where men can have more than one wife. And of course, to me as an American, that sounded very strange. So I thought, well, the only reason you would do that is because you want to have, like a guy who has a wife and girlfriends at the same time, except he has to marry them all. So I thought it was mainly just about that. And that was pretty much my view. And it was it's not anything that I, thought was a good idea. And I'm not saying I still do, but here's something that just made me think a little bit. I talked to one of my friends in that part of the world, and he explained it to me like this. He said, back in history, we're talking hundreds of years ago, it was not uncommon that because of wars or other things that happened, that there were more women than men. So he told me that one of the reasons that existed, maybe not the only reason, but one of the reasons is because in their culture, women cannot really live on their own. Maybe today, to some extent, they can. But if you go back 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, there was really no good way for a woman to live on her own. So they pretty much all had to be married to somebody, okay? So the idea of a man having up to 4 wives, yes, some of that was because the guy wanted to have 2 or 3 or 4 wives, but a lot of it was just so every woman had a man to be married to in a time and a place when there wasn't many other options, and they were taken care of. And I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying from their perspective, that was one of the reasons that existed, to take care of the women. And that was true in history. At the same time, he told me that virtually nobody today does that. In other words, back in history, when that was more of a need in their culture and their history, He said, bring it up to now. You go to the Middle Eastern country and that, and a Muslim family. And he says, yeah, there's two kind of people that still do that. He said, very rich people who can afford that, and very conservative people who tend to live in like remote villages and rural areas where they still do that because they've always done it that way. And they still may have reasons, like I told you, about taking care of their women that to them make sense. But to the typical middle class, educated, just like us kind of people, many of them educated in the US and other countries, they get married, that's it. I mean, there's no taking in a second wife or a third wife or a fourth wife, even if their religion and the law says they can. So he says nowadays, like several of my friends are married. I said, well, what happened if you came home with another wife? And they laugh and they say, my wife would kill me. So their culture has changed quite a lot. And the modern version of their culture hardly ever does that anymore. So it's kind of going by the wayside. But it, like I said, it gave me a perspective that I did not have. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying it was the right thing. I'm just saying help me understand a little bit about why some people might do that. Any questions or anything right now? I want to keep it kind of short and sweet, but touch on the assignments, review a little bit. If we were in class, we'd be having discussions on all this stuff. So this is kind of our version of that. I don't think it's too hard of a week, but make sure you spread out what needs to be done so you don't have to do it all at once. If you got questions on anything, I think you have my contact information. You can text me, call me, email me. If you call, I usually don't answer. You have to leave a message, but so texting might be better. Okay, I appreciate the four of you joining us. And, you know, let me know anything, any questions, but get your notes finished up, work on your other assignments. I think you'll find that AI documentary interesting. It's your future. It's going to have a big impact on. And we'll be back here on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Okay. I'll undo my screen so you can see me. I'm actually here. Let's see here. What do I got to do? My video. There I am. Can you see me now? Okay. Okay. Take care. And we will be back here Thursday at 2 if you want to join us again. Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
What? Take care. Okay. Take care. I'm going to end it now.